So, Dark Age is pretty much the golden son of the time jump books. It's essentially balls to the wall from start to finish of just absolute craziness, which is good because it's also the longest book in the series so far. Red God, the last book that's going to come out, might end up being longer than that. I hope it is because I want to read a really long book for the finale of this story. So, as you can tell by the thumbnail, the best way of describing this book is just everything's fucked. Everything is fucked up. Everything's going wrong. Pretty much everything goes wrong for everyone in every way throughout the entire story. Nobody's having a good time throughout this story. There's just tons of curveballs and screw ups the entire time. That being said, you're gonna love it. Easy 9.8 out of 10. It's beautiful. Easily one of the best books in the series, and I've actually seen some people say that it is the best book in the series. It's their favorite book in the series, which I'm not going to argue with. I think it's I think it's awesome. It's pretty nuts. I don't think I had any real issues with it. Now, a lot of things happen in this book. From the time that Lysander is on Atlantea's ship up in orbit around Mercury to the time that he has that kind of final showdown with Darrow, it feels like two books have already passed. So much crap happens. So much, and not crap, like it's not bad. A lot of stuff happens in between those two major events there. So it's kind of the opposite of Iron Gold, the book that came before this, where Iron Gold feels like kind of half of a book. Dark Age feels like two books put together, which is a good thing, obviously. I've seen that anyone who's a fan of these books seems to hate Lysander. At least a lot of people seem to hate Lysander with just a burning passion, which I totally get. But that being said, his storyline is definitely one of my favorites, even if he is a moron and making all the wrong decisions, doing everything that we don't want him doing. Where part of the reason why is because whereas Darrow spends a lot of time in this book planning, right? He does have a lot of action, a lot of crazy things that happen. He does spend a significant chunk of his time planning and getting ready for the next battle, whereas Lysander is just fighting for his life. Every page he's on the verge of dying or getting caught or everything going wrong. Lysander is not having a very good time in this book at all. In fact, I don't think Lysander's had a very good time in any book. Now that I think about it. I love that we can read from Virginia's point of view and how Pierce Brown kind of makes the distinction between the Sovereign and Virginia with some of these chapters. I think that's really cool because it's oftentimes referenced that there's a big difference between the Sovereign and Virginia. There's a big difference between Darrow and the Reaper. And then in these latest books, they're also addressing the difference between the Goblin and Sevro. I love all of the politics and stuff that are happening in Virginia's story. The entire Dancer thing, the whole thing that happens with Dancer just breaks my heart. I hate it. It's so sad. And I've kind of wanted to make a separate video or maybe a short or something. I want to go back and count. It might take some time. But I want to know how many character deaths, how many named character deaths there are in these books, because there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot. Not just named character deaths, but important, really important characters just dying, just getting killed off. And this book, I think, probably has the most. Other than maybe Red Rising, but at that point, a lot of those characters haven't been established for multiple books. This book kills off a lot of characters that have been established for a while. To name a few, we've got Dancer, Theodora, Daxo, Alexander, Rona, and there's a few more important characters as well that I'll end up getting to. This book just has no chill whatsoever. It tears down everything that you're hoping to happen, and it just throws it in the dirt. Anytime you think something's going good or something great's about to happen, It's not. It's not. Just it doesn't. It's not going to. Orion goes crazy, kind of rightfully so. It's a really heartbreaking segment, but she commits genocide and nearly destroys the entire planet of Mercury. Sephi is betrayed and murdered in a horrible, awful way. Ephraim's murdered. Seraphina dies. Her death's probably the most unexpected death, at least in the way it happens. She's just talking like, "Oh, would you look at that over there?" And the top half of her body just explodes. The Ascamani are introduced, or Ascamani. I'm not sure how it's pronounced exactly, but that whole chapter in which they were, or that whole segment in which they were introduced, I was really confused, and I think other readers might have been really confused as well. I thought that Pierce Brown had just gone completely off the deep end, and he said, "Fuck it, let's throw some aliens in the mix. Why not?" I thought it was literal aliens that were showing up, and I wasn't sure why, but obviously you end up learning exactly what's going on, and it was great. I enjoyed it. It was really creepy, really creepy. It was that whole situation was creepy as hell, and infuriating as well, watching all the bad stuff that was coming from that, and them just not being able to stop them, and no matter what they were doing. Which unfortunately brings me to one of the darkest moments of the entire series, which is the birth and death of Ulysses, Victra's son. Now, I had mentioned in my last review that I believed Pierce Brown had been kind of inspired by Cormac McCarthy, specifically in regards to Blood Meridian, because with the Minotaur, there was a lot of similarities between the Minotaur, the way he talked and all that, with the Judge from Blood Meridian. And I made reference to that this review would talk about the other part, and that is that in this chapter, this segment in which Victra is having her child, they get down to this little village, and there's a man who brings them in and lets them use his house. That character's name is Cormac. Cormac McCarthy wrote Blood Meridian, and he betrays them, and as a result of that, Ulysses is murdered and nailed to a tree only hours after he's brought into the world. Blood Meridian is infamously known for the horrendous violence against babies and sexual assault against children. And another part of this segment in the story involves child brides, these young girls being forcibly married to soldiers of the Red Hand in order to keep the soldiers happy. And it's really depressing. It's horrible seeing all these things happening, and I think it's a big reference to Cormac McCarthy. If it's not, maybe it's just an absolutely massive coincidence, but I don't think that's the case. And despite the very dark nature of these chapters, there's nothing quite like watching Lyria and Volga and Victra just be vengeful badasses and fight back against this despite all odds. And Lyria leading these young girls who are being married off to these men, and in this uprising against them. It's great watching them just go around, watching Victra, very depressingly just go nuts and just killing everyone that she can, despite everything that she had been through up to that point, physically and emotionally, just kind of letting it all out. It's very satisfying watching all these guys die at their hand. And then, of course, the final epic ending to that, which is Pax and Ephraim showing up and kind of driving the final nail in the coffin. Pax taking down that torch ship, and they finally win. It's great. It's very satisfying. A good medicine for all of the dark stuff that had come before. And so that ended up being one of my favorite segments of any of these books, period. I'll remember that for a very long time. It was great. Very well written. And also, back on Luna, we are reintroduced to the Jackal and Lilith, as well as the Bone Riders, who are all these characters are pretty much dialed up to 11 from the last time that we saw them. They're essentially a cult worshiping the Jackal. They've just gone completely nuts off the deep end. There's no saving these people at all. And you actually kind of feel sorry for the Jackal. At least I did. I felt kind of sorry for the Jackal, at least this new Jackal, because, you know, he's just a clone. He's a kid, and he was forced into this life by Lilith and the man that he was beforehand. He could, you know, being reborn, being a clone now, he had he had the potential to be a good person if he was just raised by the right person. Unfortunately, he was raised by the wrong person, and he was a very evil bastard in his last life. And so we're having to watch him kind of just struggle to be the man that he's expected to be. And watching his interactions with Virginia are really good and really depressing. Watching what happens with him and the Howlers that they capture. It's for that whole segment was, for the first time in a long time, a point in the story when I just felt completely hopeless for the characters and their potential demise, their future that they were going to meet. I just remember thinking, there's no way they're going to get out of this. We're about to see all of these people die. They're all going to die. Virginia's going to die. Severo's going to die. All the Howlers are going to die. That's going to be the end of it. It's the first time I really remember feeling that in a while in these stories. Because as you read the same author again and again, and as you read more and more books, you start to kind of expect things, and they're going to find a way out of this. It's going to be fine. But there's always the best and most satisfying writing when you just feel completely hopeless for the characters. You don't think there's any way that they're possibly going to get out of this. That's when you've really got something there. Then finally, of course, we have Cassius, that beautiful honor-obsessed pixie, showing up at the last minute on the Archie to save Darrow and a few of his men. Which I don't care if it's a very overly convenient ex machina just to keep Darrow alive. It's awesome, and I love it. And it's great because I was right. I was right, like I said in Iron Gold, that I didn't think that Cassius was actually dead. So that feels good. Overall, I love it. I'm about 200 pages from the end of Lightbringer at the time of recording this. I should be getting that review out next, here in a few days, sometime early next week. Then on to more stories. I think I've decided that I'm going to start reading Brandon Sanderson's stories after this, based on his recommended reading order for this year, for the year of 2024. But who knows? I might change it again at the last minute. I know I wanted to. I was considering reading A Princess of Mars, which is the John Carter of Mars series, but I think I want to try to move away from sci-fi and try to go back into fantasy. I also thought about picking up the Jack Reacher books, maybe trying to read the first one of that. But right now at the moment, I think I'm leaning more towards reading the Brandon Sanderson books. But who knows? We'll just end up seeing what happens. For now, I just got to concentrate on Lightbringer, getting that review out, and then of course when I'm done with that, regardless of the next book that I choose, I still got to catch up to the other book reviews that I have not made videos for yet in the past, which is my, With the Old Breed, Blood Meridian, Jurassic Park, and A Dance with Dragons. And I think that's it. I think that's all the book reviews that I have to do. And then I'll be all caught up. And then I have room to make other videos, especially in regards to this. There's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about in regards to this story, different inspirations that Pierce Brown might have had, and other things like that. So, yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. See y'all around. Adios.